One does not become a man automatically, not by age, not by a passport, and not by how much money one earns. A man is not made simply by learning to be useful or convenient, nor is it the one who has started a family, built a career, or learned to speak with a serious tone. A man becomes a man only by passing through an inner death, through the breakdown of the old self, through the darkness where, for the first time, you stand alone, face to face with yourself. In ancient times, this was well known. That is why every boy who reached a certain age had to undergo something that could not be faced without fear, pain, and loss. He had to die, symbolically, in order to be born again. This process was called initiation. It is no coincidence that the word initiation comes from the Latin initium, beginning, because that is precisely when everything began. It was at that moment the boy lost one self and gained another. He lost childhood and gained manhood. This was not a formal ritual. It was a sacred act. To grasp the scale of the loss we are experiencing today, it is important to look back, if only for a moment, into the past, where masculine maturity did not arise spontaneously, was not given by age, nor granted without reason, but was earned through an experience akin to an inner burning. In tribal cultures, boys had no right to call themselves men until they underwent a series of rites, each becoming a point of no return, a moment of radical break with the past. Among the Bushmen or Maasai, for example, boys were taken away from the village for days or weeks, cut off from everything familiar and dear to them, deprived not only of comfort, but also of themselves, because in that isolated space there was nothing to hold on to except their own inner strength, the existence of which the youth had not yet even suspected. The trials they had to endure could include fasting, physical pain, cold, loneliness, fear, and most importantly, the inability to call for help, since help belonged to the old world, which had already ended. It was like the death of the body, but without actual death, like the destruction of the ego, but voluntary. In the traditions of the indigenous peoples of North America, boys were sent on solitary vision quests, several days alone, without food, in the mountains or forests, without distracting sounds, only nature and their own soul, only darkness, spirits, fear, and the possibility to hear for the first time a voice that speaks not from outside, but from within. The Spartan system was perhaps one of the most radical. Boys were taken from their mothers at the age of 7 and placed into a harsh military structure, where survival, pain, competition, and constant fear became everyday life. Only after passing through all this did a man earn the right to be part of the adult community. Among the Australian Aboriginals, initiation included ritual circumcision and the application of sacred scars to the body, each becoming a mark of belonging to a new world, the world of men. These rites were accompanied by dances, chants, trance states, and deep symbolism. The body suffered, but the spirit was born. What all these rites share in common is pain that does not break but creates, a cruelty that holds the deepest wisdom, the rejection of pity for the sake of gaining strength, not the kind that shows in muscles or threats, but the inner, silent resilience that helps a man stand firm when everything around him collapses and remain true to himself. If this were only about traditions, we might dismiss these practices as cultural quirks or relics of the past irrelevant today. But the truth is that behind all these rites stood not culture, but psychology, more precisely, an archetypal structure of consciousness that demands the transition from one stage of life to be accompanied by crisis, upheaval, loss, and inner breakdown. Without this, a person does not truly change. They may accumulate knowledge, change behavior, adapt, but remain the same inside, because what Jung called the initiatory death has not occurred. That is, the destruction of the old ego and immersion into the unconscious. This is not just a theory. It is an observation confirmed by thousands of stories and lives. Within the deep structure of every man exists a part that fears separation from the mother, in a broad sense, from the protected, warm, comforting world. Until this connection is broken, a man cannot be autonomous. He may be an obedient son, a good citizen, even successful, but inside, he will remain dependent. He will fear being alone. He will not be ready for pain, loss, responsibility, because his whole being will still hope that someone will come and save him. Initiation made the impossible happen. It broke this invisible yet defining bond. It threw a person into the abyss of solitude, where I had to grow up. No one did this for him. It was an inner trial where he first met himself, not as a son or apprentice, but as a being capable of standing before the darkness without intermediaries. Thus, maturity and resilience were born. Thus, the capacity for silence, for action, for decision-making emerged. Thus appeared the man who could not only protect, but silently endure the unbearable, not out of fear, but from the understanding that this is exactly his role, to be where others cannot be, not because he is stronger, but because he was there first, in his own darkness, in his own initiation. Today, in a reality where there are no tribes, no shamans, no sacred initiation rituals, a man becomes an adult on paper, by documents, by birth date, but not through an inner event, not through a breaking point, not through sacrifice, and therefore not in essence. He becomes a man formally, almost by accident, by default, but deep inside he still lives in anticipation of someone saying, "Now you are ready." Yet no one says this, and this silence of the modern world is not symbolic, because it lacks ritual, transformation, recognition, and the pain through which one must pass so that something inside breaks and something new is born. Modern society seems to have decided that suffering is a system error, that pain must be avoided, that everything should be smooth, safe, and predictable. And in this refusal of pain as a teacher, fear as a threshold, and solitude as purification, it has killed the very possibility of growing up. We get a generation of men raised without fathers. Even if they were physically present, they were absent mentally, spiritually, symbolically. They did not pass on the main thing. They did not introduce strength. They did not initiate. They did not let them walk the path. And so, a man who has not undergone initiation remains a child, only now in an adult body, with loans, obligations, external signs of power, but without a core inside, without inner silence, without that deep clarity that comes only through crossing a boundary. He may be outwardly active, even aggressive. He may play the role of a man, demonstrate strength, seduce, earn, achieve. But all this is a performance, because inside him the transition has not occurred. There was no death, and therefore no true birth. Without the rite of initiation, a man remains dependent on the opinions and approval of others, on recognized success, on a woman, on his mother, on comfort. And all of this is a form of the very psychological umbilical cord that was never cut, because no one led him beyond the threshold, left him alone, or let him face the abyss that cannot be crossed without destruction. And yet, a person is a being in whom the ancient lives even beneath thick layers of modernity. And even if the ritual has disappeared, the need for it remains. Even if there is no tribe, the archetype remains. If society offers nothing, the psyche itself creates moments in which what was once normal, a personal inner ritual, becomes possible. Today, initiation may come not as a ceremony, but as a crisis, as illness, as loneliness that no one understands, as the destruction of a marriage or the loss of a loved one, as a sudden emptiness where you no longer know who you are. And if a person at that moment does not run away, does not drown the pain with distractions, pills, empty words, and illusions, but instead enters that darkness fully, he will receive something greater than an explanation. He will receive initiation. It will not be an external ritual, but an internal event. It will be a breaking, not necessarily physical, but always psychological. It will be fear, shame, pain, the loss of footing. And if he does not turn away, if he remains in this state long enough, if he accepts solitude, accepts uncertainty, accepts destruction, then he will pass through. Then birth will happen, heavy but true. The modern path of initiation is the path of the lone man, because there is no one to lead him, because mentors are scarce, because there is no tribe, but the archetype lives. And so, the path is possible. We can comfort ourselves with illusions that modern institutions supposedly replace ancient rites, that school is initiation, that the army is initiation, that marriage, children, career, all these make a man. But these forms, in most cases, are nothing but external imitations. True initiation demands one thing: internal collapse. Not a game played on a convenient schedule, but a real, painful, impossible, without fear and vulnerability breakdown. Yes, the army can be initiation, but only if the person went through it not mechanically, but experienced an inner crisis. Yes, separation or divorce can be initiation, but only if he did not break, but accepted pain as a teacher. The question that inevitably arises for every thoughtful man is not whether initiation was important in the past. That is obvious. The question is whether it is possible now, in an age where almost everything comes down to the external, where culture has lost its roots, and spiritual practices have turned into trends and commercial services. And yet, even in this noise and chaos, there is one space where a true ritual can still happen. That is your inner darkness. It will be unnoticed and without witnesses. Perhaps no one will even know what you went through, but you yourself will know. Because up until that point you were alone, and after it, you became yourself. Not in the sense that you became better or stronger. You became more real, more empty, and more full at the same time. Today, to go through initiation, you must lead yourself. Tear yourself away from the old by yourself. Create the darkness into which you will enter by yourself. Stay silent when you want to scream. Stand when everything inside urges you to run away. This is masculinity. Not alpha behavior or its image, but an inner silence where there is no longer a need for explanation. And yet, it is important to understand. No one can force another to go through initiation. It is impossible to lead someone through pain if he himself is not ready to stay in it. You cannot force maturity. It is a choice, always a choice. Sometimes unconscious, intuitive, but still a choice, not to run away. You may be surrounded by men who have passed their night, and nothing will change in you until you yourself find yourself in your own. And even then, no one can go through it for you. A mentor can walk beside you, but the steps are only yours. The darkness is only yours. The birth is only yours. There is pain in this, but there is also freedom, because no one can prevent you from passing through. No one can take this path away from you if you have truly taken it. And if you pass through, then from within appears what is most lacking in this world: mature masculine presence. Simply, a man who stands. If one day darkness enters your life, do not turn away from it and do not seek easy paths. This is not a punishment or a test. It is the beginning of a path that leads to authenticity. It can begin at 20, 30, 40 years old. To walk it means to stop fearing yourself, to stop hiding behind masks and other people's expectations. It means accepting yourself with all your wounds and fears without retreating. Because it is in this full acceptance that your strength is born. Not external, but silent, internal. And when you come out of this darkness, you will no longer be the same boy or youth, dependent on others' approval or external signs of success. You will become a man, not by passport, not by status, but by heart, by your experience, by your readiness to stand when everything around is collapsing. And this is the truest initiation, your personal, invisible ritual that no one can give you and no one can take away.